The firstborn, the first among all, or the Emperor's Angels of Death. The First Legion served as the prototype for what the other legions would become, acting as the baseline template for the more specialized ones that followed and as the standard against which all others would be measured. There weren't many differences from the original canon, except for one small detail. Unlike the Angels of the Canon, who lacked a clear purpose or role in the Great Crusade before finding their primarch, in this version, the Emperor gave them a critical mission. They were tasked with eliminating horrific and dangerous threats that could endanger humanity simply by being known. In other words, to eradicate them in secret, without drawing attention. Additionally, they were granted the most powerful and forbidden technologies and weaponry in the Emperor's arsenal. The Dark Angels' mission took them so far that they ended up fighting in the Gal Stars, and it was there that they found their primarch. The primarch Lion L. Johnson and his story on Caliban remained largely unchanged. For those wondering, the Lion fell into the forests of Caliban, inhabited by extremely dangerous creatures, some warped by the influence of the warp. He survived until he was found by Luther and the Order of Knights of Caliban. Together, they eradicated or imprisoned all the planet's creatures and united all the knightly orders under the Lion's leadership. Shortly after, the Emperor and the First Legion arrived on Caliban. The Lion and his order joined without issue, as it was essentially the same mission they were already undertaking, now extended beyond the stars. This assigned purpose, combined with their secrecy, made the Legion arrogant. They believed themselves superior to others for facing humanity's most dangerous enemies. However, the Lion himself was unaffected by this arrogance. He remained loyal to the Emperor. But how did they turn traitor? Well, while the Dark Angels were fighting in the Gal Stars and lacked access to Caliban to train new space marines, it was decided to recruit from worlds near their campaigns. This enraged and disillusioned Luther. When he returned to Caliban, he found a bleak reality. The world once covered in vast forests was now a desert dotted with hive cities, its minerals and riches completely stripped. And so, Luther ordered Caliban to secede from the Imperium and declare its independence. The silence of Caliban sparked all kinds of investigations, but the most unexpected came from the primarch of the Imperial Fists, Dorn. Instead of declaring war, the Emperor's Praetorian confessed to being a conspirator against the Imperium. Dorn explained that the Chaos Gods had taken notice of Luther's studies of their realm and were highly impressed by his potential. He went on to say that the Rebel Lion was already underway, and that the presence of the Dark Angels loyal to Luther at Istvan V would be invaluable in crushing those Astartes legions that could not be convinced to join their cause. Although Luther was hesitant to abandon his defenses, Dorn's Rebel Lion seemed like his only opportunity to rid himself of the Imperium's oppressive yoke. Dorn offered him support in his fight and pointed out that the Lion's campaigns were so deeply entrenched in the Gal Stars that Luther's forces could travel to Istvan and return before the Loyalists even had time to reach Caliban. The offers were tempting, but what finally convinced Luther to join Dorn was the opportunity to stain the Lion's reputation. By going to Istvan, the Dark Angels, all of the Dark Angels, would be seen as traitors and heretics, no matter how much their primarch denied it. Despite the relatively small number of Dark Angels present at Istvan, the Legion carved a bloody toll into the Loyalist forces. When the massacre ended and the survivors spread word of the Rebel Lion throughout the Imperium, the name Lion L. Johnson was spoken with the same contempt as Robout Guilliman, Ferrus Manus, Vulcan, and Dorn himself. Once their mission was complete, Luther returned to his home world and prepared for the Lion's inevitable arrival. When the Lion finally reached Caliban with a massive fleet, he was greeted with the title the Unforgiven, and the planet's defenses destroyed much of his forces. Despite this, the Lion made it to Luther's location, and the two faced off in single combat. But Luther had been blessed by the 4 Chaos Gods, allowing him to match a primarch in battle. The fight ended when a massive warp rift opened, consuming the planet, and both Lion L. Johnson and his legion were pulled into it. Luther and the Order managed to escape, watching as everything was destroyed and dragged into the warp. Now without a home world, the Dark Angels wandered aimlessly, without purpose, until they encountered the Space Wolves. Expecting a battle, the Dark Angels were surprised to learn that the Wolves had allied with Dorn and pledged themselves to Khorne. During their journey toward Terra, the Dark Angels taught the wolves how to control their rage, channel it toward their enemies, and properly worship their god. Unfortunately for them, they never made it to Terra, but they did learn the outcome of the final confrontation between the Emperor and Dorn. The Emperor won, I think. The news of the siege outcome didn't discourage them, it was received with calm. The Dark Angels knew there were subtler ways to bring down the Emperor. During their travels, they stumbled upon one of the Unforgiven on a backward world. After capturing and interrogating him, they discovered that the portal had been created by the Emperor himself, meant to save his son and his legion by scattering them across time and the galaxy. This revelation reignited a flame within Luther and the Dark Angels, a drive and determination they thought lost. Not only did they now know who had truly caused Caliban's destruction, but they also learned that the Unforgiven were still out there, waiting to be captured and turned away from the Lion. And so began the scourge of the Dark Angels that would last 4 millennia, a constant threat to the Imperium. They struck at strategic and vital locations, only to retreat to hidden worlds and sectors unknown to the Imperium. The Legion never sought refuge in the Eye of Terror, nor did they worship the 4 Chaos Gods. They simply used them as tools to achieve their goals. And that has made them the traitor Legion with the purest gene seed of them all. Today, the Legion continues its tireless hunt for the Unforgiven. Once captured, they are subjected to a process to convince them of their mistake, choosing to follow Lion L. Johnson and abandoning Caliban. If they persist in their loyalty, the interrogator librarians are forced to use increasingly extreme methods to guarantee their enlightenment. For those who resist to the point that only death would silence their devotion to the Lion, there remains one final path to redemption. Their bodies and souls are offered to entities of the warp. Though the Dark Angels see this as a painful failure of their persuasion and oratory, sometimes it is the only way for an Unforgiven to finally be redeemed. The plans of the Dark Angels are so precise and complex that, once set in motion, they can trigger a domino effect on an apocalyptic scale. And now, Luther has begun executing a plan that could threaten the Emperor himself. Though the Dark Angels still retain the appearance of their original structure, the demands of their current circumstances have necessitated certain subtle but significant changes. Luther holds the title of Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels, as well as the designation Master of Caliban. The first chapter, under his direct command, is especially noteworthy, as it is composed entirely of veterans clad in Terminator armor. Informally known as the Death Wing, they are responsible for securing the Caliban system while their lord continues his search for signs of the Unforgiven, both within the Rock and beyond. The other chapters of the Legion are more conventional in structure, each consisting of up to 1,000 battle brothers. They are fully self-sufficient, with fleets spread throughout the galaxy. Every chapter contains a Raven Wing detachment tasked with responding swiftly and precisely to sightings of their fallen brethren. Chapter masters are supported by interrogator librarians, scholars of the Immatrium who harness the warp's power in all its forms, though always with careful and methodical control. The highest-ranking members of the Legion may be inducted into an inner circle, those who know the Legion's deepest and darkest chaos-born secrets. Entering this inner circle is to risk madness and death, for only those highly skilled in the art of walking the Immatrium can transcend to this new level and unlock the hidden gifts within. Once an Unforgiven has been captured and convinced of their error in following the Lion and turning their back on Caliban, whether through persuasion or possession, they are brought before Luther and ceremonially reinstated into the chapter that recovered them. While such individuals are rarely permitted to rise to positions of leadership, they serve as living symbols of why the Dark Angels continue to fight their long war. The Legion was deeply tormented by the fact that Lion L. Johnson recruited from worlds other than Caliban. After the eventual destruction of their home world, they stubbornly refused to accept new initiates. For decades, the Dark Angels remained closed to recruitment, but the passage of time and a drastic reduction in their numbers forced Luther to issue a decree: either they began recruiting again, or they would face extinction. This decision was made reluctantly. Rather than accepting initiates from just any available world, the Legion chose to seek candidates who matched their gene seed both genetically and spiritually. As with many other fleet-based legions, the Dark Angels have returned time and again to fewer than 24 carefully selected planets. Now, 10,000 years later, the overwhelming majority of the Legion traces its lineage back to these recruitment worlds, among them Cimmeria, Tessera Rubis, and Clades Tertius. Despite this shift, every brother still carries a profound sense of mourning for the loss of Caliban, thanks to intense training and psycho-conditioning. The Legion deliberately avoids spreading the seeds of chaos near its recruitment worlds to prevent any possibility of corruption among future brothers. Over the millennia, the Dark Angels have become obsessively protective of these planets. Though many are still under Imperial control, countless Dark Angels have fought and died defending them against orcs, in repelling inquisitorial crusades, or in purging gene-stealer infestations. Each brother is equally driven by the resolve to ensure the nightmare of losing a homeworld never happens again. The Dark Angels' ability to resist the corrupting influence of chaos is reflected directly in the purity of their gene seed, which is by far the least corrupted among all the traitor legions. This is largely due to their ability to navigate the Immatrium without being consumed by it, but it also speaks to the zeal and precision of their apothecaries. Progenoids are extracted from battle brothers as soon as they mature, minimizing the window of possible corruption. They are then meticulously examined and stored in vaults protected by multiple layers of seals and arcane wards until the time for use arrives. Though all implants remain functional, the gene seed has accumulated a number of minor flaws over the millennia. While these do not significantly impair the Legion's performance, the differences become apparent during the rare occasions when they are able to compare their seed with progenoids recovered from captured members of the Unforgiven. The Dark Angels make use of all aspects of the Chaos Pantheon, but far from being blind fanatics, their approach is coldly analytical and calculated. They believe that through rigorous study and methodical application of the Immatrium, they can harness its power and wield it as a devastating weapon to further their own goals, chief among them, the fall of the Emperor and the capture of the Unforgiven. Through the teachings passed down by Luther, the Legion has learned to limit its exposure to the most corrupting properties of chaos. However, they do not hesitate to subject others to its effects. In fact, they are a key force behind the spread of cults across the Imperium. The Legion has also attempted to educate other traitor forces in the practical use of chaos. They've had some success, most notably with the Space Wolves, and also with the Raven Guard, whom they instructed in the ways of Tzeentch after the loss of their Primarch. Other legions, such as the Blood Angels and the Salamanders, have proven less receptive and are even openly hostile toward their philosophies. Though chaos is the means by which the Dark Angels execute their plans, what truly drives them is their endless pursuit of the Unforgiven. Luther's obsession, even as seen by other Chaos Legions, with erasing any trace of their dead Primarch and convincing his former followers of the truth of their cause at any cost, is viewed as a dangerous and even self-destructive distraction. There are countless instances in which the Legion has fought alongside other Chaos forces, only to abandon the assault at critical moments upon receiving word of a possible sighting of one of their lost brothers. Such behavior has led to constant friction and, on more than one occasion, resulted in Imperial victories due to the sudden withdrawal of the Dark Angels. This irrational and obsessive drive has strained relationships even with traditionally pragmatic legions, and some outsiders have gone so far as to cite it as an unconscious manifestation of Mal's influence. Unlike other Chaos Legions, the Dark Angels' equipment remains up to date across most of their chapters. In addition, they retain a vast cache of forbidden technologies dating back to the days of the Great Crusade and the Heresy, though they rarely use them due to their age and the catastrophic risk should they fail. The exception is the first chapter, under the direct command of Luther. These warriors still wield original weapons and armor from the Great Crusade, including their suits of Terminator armor, worn not only as tools of war but as symbols of their lost legacy on Caliban. As for their combat doctrine, it does not differ significantly from the canonical version. They are a versatile legion, trained in all forms of warfare and capable of adapting to any strategic situation. However, there is one fundamental exception: whenever news of a lost brother surfaces, all operations cease, regardless of their importance, and the Legion does everything in its power to capture him alive. Once secured, They eliminate all witnesses, ensuring that no record remains of the existence of any Dark Angels still loyal to the Emperor.
The Dark Angels are considered one of the most dangerous traitor legions of all. While we haven't touched on some secondary topics, there isn't much information available, as their structure, culture, and even combat style don't differ too much from their loyalist counterparts in the canon. So, if you enjoyed this alternate history of the Dark Angels, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment on which other legions or chapters you'd like to learn about in this alternate universe. What happened to Cypher? Well, that's a story for another video.